Alright, so what I want to talk about is like the turnover rate of ownership of motorbike for riders. And what started this idea was I was talking to my boss the other day, my employer, and actually it's because what I actually did was like I bought my first bike off him, and then after a month of owning it and riding it a little bit, I actually sold it for a profit. And he was a bit, we joke about it, but he was a bit hurt by that. So I had it for a month and I sold it. And you might think that like I just shafted him, but in this video I want to explain the like true reasons and the reasons why riders, go through a lot of bikes. Why I went through all the bikes that I went through. Why did I buy and sell? Why am I on my 11th bike? So I want to talk about some of those reasons and just share my experiences and see if they resonate with other people's reasons why they buy and sell. So welcome to my channel where we talk about bikes and Bible verses. As usual, we're going to have a Bible verse at the end. So I'm going to go through my experiences with all the bikes that I bought. The first one, which is I bought off my employer, was a Kawasaki Ninja 650, and it was the learner one. It was the restricted one. And that bike, when I bought it was only 6 years old, but it only had 1,000, or I think it had 1,100 kilometers on it. And yeah, I drove it for a couple of hundred kilometers, and I ended up selling it like after a month. And there are three main reasons why I decided to sell it. The first one, which probably made like 50% of the reason, was just doubt, self-doubt. Is riding for me? I had like a young family at the time, and I don't know if you can call it like fear or just doubt, and But the second reason was because when I bought it, I knew nothing about bikes, and I realized after learning about it more that people usually start on 300 or like 250, 300, and I was on this 650, which felt pretty powerful at the time, even though it was restricted, and I kind of felt like I was missing out. And the third reason I sold it was just the curiosity. I knew I kind of bought it cheap, but I wasn't sure. And at that time, I used to have like this mentality of let's just try something and see how it goes. So anyway, I ended up selling it. It took maybe a couple of weeks to sell, and I made a profit. I bought it for 5,000. I sold it for 5,700. And then it was only a few weeks later where I bought my second bike. And that's where, like, if you're a new rider and you think you have that doubt and you want to quit, after you sell your bike, you get that itch, just the itch to get another one. And this happened to me. I think this was one of the reasons in the early sales of my bike was, selling it because of doubt and then having that itch. And I went and I ended up buying an R3. It was pretty like beaten up, had been sort of dropped a few times. Anyway, it worked out well that I bought my R3 because I was in, I had my L's, and a lot of my time in riding was just practicing for the learner's or the skills test. And although you can still do the test and pass on a 650, it's just easier on a smaller bike. So most of my time on my L's, I was just learning and riding. I used to ride around a little bit, but most of it was just learning the skills, the U-turns and the cone weaves and all of that. So I passed the test on that bike, and I kept that bike for a few months longer, but ended up selling it. The main reasons was, again, a bit of self-doubt. Is this really for me? But that was more diminished. So where I said it was like 50% before, now it's more like 30%. The other reasons are, well, I didn't need to practice anymore, and I wanted to see what it was like now to go back to a 650. So that was sort of in the back of my mind. And also I wanted to test, I made a profit on my first bike. Am I going to make is it going to be an easy sell on this bike? And it turns out that this bike was an easier sell. I didn't make as much of a profit, but I still made a profit. I bought it for, I think, 36 or 38. I think I spent a couple of hundred because, you know, the levers were bent and I put a new chain on. But I sold it for like 44. So, you know, I rode it around for a few months and I sold it for more than what I got it plus what I spent. Couple of weeks after that, I went and bought my next 650. So that was the Suzuki Gladius 650. That was the loaner restricted one as well. And after getting on that one, I realized, you know, my first 650 felt really powerful, but this one I was questioning, you know, was it less powerful, or maybe it was just that I could control the power better, and it didn't feel as overwhelming as when I first got my 650. Now that was a nice bike, but there was nothing really notable about it. I think I had it for around 3 or 4 months and I ended up selling it. I think the main reason, I guess I just wanted money, so there's a new reason now for selling it, and I knew that I could just easily flip bikes. So I'd gotten the taste of how easy it was to just buy and sell, and how different the bike community is to like just everything else that you sell secondhand. Anyway, I made a little bit of a profit on that bike. I think I made like $200 profit. It took me a couple of weeks to sell. And then I didn't ride for maybe 3 or 4 months, and I was coming towards the end of my restricted license, so I bought another learner restricted bike. Even though if I'd waited like another 2 months, I could have bought a full powered bike, but still, I don't know why, I just ended up buying a KTM RC390, and I'm really glad that I bought that bike because it was really fun. It was a really fun bike to own. I have a lot of memories with that, and you know, even though it's a loaner bike, I don't think it should be your first bike because it's kind of race spec. You know, it's a bit harder to ride. Like, it does stall a lot, single cylinder, but it is sort of more race oriented, and it is faster. It's faster than the R3, and even after getting my full license where I'm allowed to ride any bike, I still kept that bike for another 6 months after that. So I had this bike for 8 months. And I rode that. I did a lot of Ks on that. I did about 5,000 Ks. I rode it to work a lot, which is 100-kilometer round trip. And I ended up selling that bike for the main reason of probably knowing, primarily because I know how easy it is to buy and sell bikes, and I thought, well, maybe I can move up to a full-powered, non-restricted bike. So I sort of got, I don't know, maybe wanted to take a rest from riding a bit. I sold it. It wasn't an easy sell, and I actually lost quite a lot of money on that. I think I lost $1,400, including my helmet. So the guy who bought it, he wanted my helmet as well. They were like students. I just gave it to them. It was kind of hard to sell that bike. But you know, even though I lost $1,400, and overall I'm at minus $200 now, I've still you know ridden four bikes, and I'm only minus $200. So even though I lost quite a bit, I'm still kind of doing okay. After that, I think a couple of months later, I bought my first full powered bike, which was a 2007 CBR600RR. The feeling that I had when I bought that bike was like this pleasure explosion in my brain. Like just on the test ride, I took it on the test ride. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just the country road, slightly damp. Maybe the sound of the bike, and just riding it gave this pleasure explosion in my brain. And it was a really cheap bike. So I bought this. I'm in 2019. I bought a 2007 CBR600RR for 2,000 Australian dollars. Right? That's, if you compare it to US, that's probably, I don't know, $1,200 or something. the bike, there was no mechanical problems with the bike. It ran fine. The only problem was it had 110,000 kilometers on it, so I had a lot of high mileage. I kept that bike for almost a year, maybe 8 months, and I did maybe 5,000 Ks on it. The reason why I sold that bike primarily was, you know, it was getting up there in the kilometers. Already had 110,000 when I bought it, and I put already 5,000 Ks in about 8 months. So I thought, well, maybe I should sell it, because you don't know because of the high kilometers. I made a profit. I sold it for 2,500. I bought it for 2. I sold it for 2.5. I didn't put any money on the bike, so I didn't put any rego or tires or anything like that. It had almost 1 year rego when I bought it, so even the rego itself was worth about maybe a quarter of the price of the bike. The reason why I sold it was that the high kilometers, and also, like, it was, you know, my wife wasn't happy with it. It broken down a couple of times. One time she had to come and pick me up, just like a dirty fuel pump, and it was low fuel, and just didn't, you know, broke down for that reason. Broke down for the kill switch problem, which I cleaned out. I cleaned out the fuel pump, and I sold it in a day. Less than a day. So I bought it for 2,000. I ended up selling it for 2,500 to, you know, one guy who was a student. Didn't have much money. I still got 2,500 for it, and I was getting abuse from other people who, because, you know, all these people messaging me. I'm telling him it's sold, and, you know, then I'm getting this abuse. So that was a very, very easy sell, and it was a really good bike to ride. I took a bit of a break after that, and then I ended up buying so I'm in 2020 now, and I bought a 2016 ZX6R 636. So that was kind of like my dream bike at that time. When I bought it, I had a close call, because it was one of those, it had like one of those track type tires, you know, the 90% track, 10% road, and I didn't know about having to warm up your tires. And it was like this cold morning, and slightly damp, and I put a little bit of throttle on it, and I started fishtailing, and lucky I didn't fall off. But that was like when I first got the bike. And then I kept it after that I kept that bike for about 8 months as well, you know, for that, I guess, the season. At that time, I didn't ride much in summer. It was just too hot, and because I'm the type of full gear person. So I sold that bike. I bought it for, I think, 7,800, and I sold it for 8,500 after 8 months. Again, no work on it, no rego. I sold it to a dealership. A guy came and picked it up. The prices of bikes during that time was COVID, and I realize now I could have sold it for 10 grand. The prices just overinflated. A dealership bought it for 8.5. I made a profit on a dealership. I did about 5,000 Ks on that bike as well, you know, mostly going to work, some leisurely rides. And the reason why I sold it, I'm not sure why. I think maybe that doubt came back in, and knowing that I could easily flip bikes. Again, when you sell a bike for self-doubt, you end up buying another one very shortly after. So I bought, I think maybe 3 weeks later, 2006 636, so 10 years older, and I bought it cheap. It was a cheap bike, but there was a lot of problems with it, and I spent most of my time learning about how to fix bikes. I made a whole video on all the problems that bike had, like even the engine wasn't bolted in properly. So I learned a lot about fixing. I took the engine out. I redid all the bearings in the wheels, in the swing arm. I redid the chain. I found so many issues just going through that whole bike. So this is my 2006 636. I had that bike for quite a while. It had 67,000 kilometers, which is okay for its age. And I spent a lot, and I sold it. I think I sold it 2 years later for for the same price, 3,600, but I already spent 3,600 on it, on fixing it and everything, also including rego, I think. I sold it to a guy who wanted to use it for the land speed record. They used it for the 650 class, and I think they won it. They won the land speed record. I mean, he'd modified it, but at the same time, while I had that bike, because I was doing so much work on it, I ended up buying my other dream bike, which is a Triumph Daytona 675R. That was a 2016 model, and I learned a lot about I made a video on doing valve clearances, so I learned a lot on that bike. I kept that for a while. That was a little uncomfortable, but I kind of got used to it. It wasn't very street friendly. I mean, all these bikes that I rode were sport bikes, but this Daytona wasn't very street friendly. I think I had that for a year. So halfway through owning that bike, so there was an overlap where I had two bikes. I had the 636 and I had the Triumph Daytona, and then halfway through that period I sold my 636, but also at the same time I bought a sort of rundown R1, and I made videos on that, fixing that, restoring that. It was a 2008 model. I sold my Daytona because, you know, $10,000 is a lot of money to just be sitting in a bike. I already had the R1, I had that ready, I've done work on it, it was just off the yard, and I sold my Daytona for around the same price that I bought it. I didn't make a profit, and now I've got this R1, which is my 9th bike, so 2 more I think after that. I did a lot of work restoring the R1. The R1 was very comfortable. This 2008 R1 was very comfortable. One thing that kind of annoyed me was because I did a lot of kilometers, highway kilometers, it was a high fuel consumption, and it wasn't bad, but it was just annoying. Like, I'm used to getting on sport bikes 5 liters per 100, 5.2, 5.4, 5.8 on my Daytona, and this one was up in the like 6.2 range. I made a video. It's got its own like sort of onboard tuner. And I tweaked it down a bit. I got it down to about 6 liters per 100. And the other reason why I sold that is actually I dropped that bike. I broke a few things on it, and because I'd spent so much time restoring it, I didn't want to go through that again. I didn't want to spend any more money on it. I sold it as is. Broken bits, broken fairings, broken foot peg, clutch lever, etc. I didn't sell it. I bought it for 5,000. I spent a couple of thousand restoring it. I owned it for over a year. I sold it for 5.5, I think, or maybe a bit more. So I had that bike for a while. Didn't want to spend money restoring it after dropping it. I just sold it. Didn't have a bike for a couple of months, and then I bought my Triumph Street Triple 675R. I wanted to try something new. It was off a dealership. It was very nice, immaculate. When I first got the bike, I didn't like the way it felt. It was, you know, the upright feeling. I didn't feel I had the control over the front wheel. I'm used to sort of sport bikes, where, you know, I was just used to that feeling. I got used to my Daytona after a while. Sorry, my Street Triple. I got used to my Street Triple after a while, and it was a nice bike. You know, the exhaust was nice. It wasn't as fast as you know, the R1, etc., but it's still fast enough for the street. And during having that, I bought my current bike, which is my CBR1000RR 2008 model. I bought that with a seized engine. So now again, I've got 2 bikes. I've got my Street Triple, which I'm riding around, and I've got my CBR1000. I replaced the engine on that, did a video, and I ended up selling my Street Triple for, I mean, I've got 2 bikes now. I like both of them. They're both different. I bought it because I wanted that super sport feel again. This one that I bought was cheap. I went and I looked at why it was cheap, and it turned out because I had a seized engine. So I bought it for 4,000. They're worth around 7,000, 8,000. I bought an engine for 3,000. I put it, installed it myself, got it running. Now I'm riding it. I would have liked to have kept both bikes, the Street Triple and the CBR, but just economic times, that was the main reason. That was, I guess, the only reason why I sold my Street Triple. I didn't really need two bikes. I liked how they were both a bit different in terms of feeling. I got used to the feeling of the Street Triple, and but just for pure economic, financial situation purposes, got rid of one. Now I'm just riding my CBR1000RR 5 lane. So that's it. That's my whole journey. You can see how it's changed. In the beginning, it was just curiosity, self-doubt, wanting to try something different. In the end, it was more just mostly, I guess, financial and tweaking exactly what type of bike that I want. So that's my 11 bikes that I've gone through in my 8 or 9 years of riding. So now I'm just gonna end here with a Bible verse, and that Bible verse is from Psalms 37:4-6, and it says, "Delight in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord, trust Him, and He will act." I think the lesson we can take from this verse, a lesson in my life, sometimes we try to do things in our own way. We trying to push. I think just relying on God's purpose, allowing Him to just give you the light in your life. And that's why a lot of times I don't try to push the way that I want to go. I just see how things pan out. And I do that, I think, to rely on just God's will. Just trusting Him, knowing that He knows the best. Maybe there's some things that you don't understand as well. So anyway, that's all I've got. I hope you enjoyed this video, gained some insights about my experiences. Don't forget, if you like this video, hit the like button. If you like my content in general, please subscribe. Take it easy and ride safe.